"Let the great boar be killed," said Meicc Datho, and it was done. For 7 years had that boar been nourished on the milk of 50 cows, yet rather on venom should it have been nourished. Such was the mischief that was to come from the carving of it. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Irish Myths Storytime podcast. I'm your host, i.e. Kneverday, creator of IrishMyths.com and the Irish Myths YouTube channel. Today's story is Scéla, Muicce, Meicc Datho, or The Tale of Meicc Datho's Pig. Although in T.W. Rolleston's retelling of the tale, featured in his book The High Deeds of Finn and Other Bardic Romances of Ancient Ireland, he styles the title The Carving of Meicc Datho's Boar. And that is the version I will be reading for you. It was published in the year 1900. Meanwhile, the oldest extant copy of The Tale of Meicc Datho's Pig appears in the 12th century Book of Leinster, but the story is undoubtedly much older than that. It is so old, in fact, that despite being from the Ulster cycle of Irish mythology, a cycle that typically sees the hero Cuchulainn in the starring roles of its adventures, Cuchulainn does not appear at all. This is especially interesting given the nature of this story. Without giving too much away, the Tale of Meicc Datho's Pig features a gathering of Ireland's greatest heroes who engage in some adversarial chit-chat. I liken it to those great scenes in Game of Thrones, the earlier seasons, wherein the characters fight with words rather than swords. Now, there are two popular explanations for Cuchulainn's conspicuous absence here. Either he wasn't born yet in the continuity of the story, or Cuchulainn was actually a late addition to the Ulster cycle, shoehorned into all of the best stories that used to feature other heroes, and this story just so happens to be one that slipped through the cracks, i.e. it has been preserved in its original form, without the Hound of Ulster's insertion. I could go into all of the arguments for and against these two theories, but that's not what I do here on this podcast. Check out my explainer videos on the Irish Myths YouTube channel if you want to journey down rabbit holes. This is Storytime, and now your story. Once upon a time there dwelt in the province of Leinster a wealthy, hospitable lord named Meicc, son of Datho. Two possessions had he, namely, a hound which could outrun every other hound and every wild beast in Erin, and a boar which was the finest and greatest in size that man had ever beheld. Now, the fame of this hound was noised all about the land, and many were the princes and lords who longed to possess it. And it came to pass that Conor, king of Ulster, and Meicc, queen of Connacht, sent messengers to Meicc Datho to ask him to sell them the hound for a price. And both the messengers arrived at the dune of Meicc Datho on the same day. Said the Connacht messenger, "We will give thee in exchange for the hound 600 milch cows, and a chariot with 2 horses, the best that are to be found in Connacht. And at the end of a year thou shalt have as much again." And the messenger of King Conor said, "We will give you no less than Connacht, and the friendship and alliance of Ulster, and that will be better for thee than the friendship of Connacht." Then Meicc Datho fell silent, and for 3 days he would not eat nor drink, nor could he sleep o' nights, but tossed restlessly on his bed. His wife observed his condition, and said to him, "Thy fast hath been long, Meicc, though good food is by thee in plenty, and at night thou turnest thy face to the wall, and well I know thou dost not sleep. What is the cause of thy trouble?" "There is a saying," replied Meicc Datho, "trust not a thrall with money, nor a woman with a secret." "When should a man talk to a woman," said his wife, "but when something were amiss? What thy mind cannot solve, perchance another's may." Then Meicc Datho told his wife of the request for his hound, both from Ulster and from Connacht, at one and the same time. "And whichever of them I deny," he said, "they will harry my cattle and slay my people." "Then hear my counsel," said the woman, "give it to both of them, and bid them come to fetch it. And if there be any harrying to be done, let them even harry each other. But in no way mayest thou keep the hound. On that, Datho rose up and shook himself, and called for food and drink, and made merry with himself and his guests. Then he sent privately for the messenger of Queen Meicc, and said to him, Long have I doubted what to do, but now I am resolved to give the hound to Connacht. Let ye send for it on such a day with a train of your nobles or warriors, and bear him forth nobly and proudly, for he is worth it. And ye shall all have drink and food, and royal entertainment in my dune. So the messenger departed, well pleased. To the Ulster messenger Datho said, After much perplexity I have resolved to give my hound to Connor. Let the best of the Ulstermen come to fetch him, and they shall be welcomed and entertained as is fitting. And for these he named the same day as he had done for the embassy from Connacht. When the appointed day came round, the flower of the fighting men of 2 provinces of Ireland were assembled before the dune of the son of Datho. And there were also Connor, king of Ulster, and Ailill, the husband of Meicc, queen of Connacht. Datho went forth to meet them. Welcome, warriors, he said to them, albeit for 2 armies at once we were not prepared. Then he bade them into the dune, and in the great hall they sat down. Now, in this hall there were 7 doors, and between every 2 doors were benches for 50 men. Not as friends bidden to a feast did the men of Ulster and Connacht look upon one another, since for 300 years the provinces had ever been at war. Let the great boar be killed, said Datho, and it was done. For 7 years had that boar been nourished on the milk of 50 cows, yet rather on venom should it have been nourished. Such was the mischief that was to come from the carving of it. When the boar was roasted, it was brought in, and many other kinds of food as side dishes. And if more be wanting to the feast, said Datho, it shall be slain for you before the morning. The boar is good, said Connor. It is a fine boar, said Ailill. And now, O Datho, how shall it be divided among us? There was among the Ulster company one Brickrew, son of Carbad, whose delight was in biting speeches and in fomenting strife, though he himself was never known to draw sword in any quarrel. He now spoke from his couch in answer to Ailill. How should the boar be divided, O son of Datho, except by appointing to carve it him who is best in deeds of arms? Here be all the valiant men of Ireland assembled. Have none of us hit each other a blow on the nose ere now? Good, said Ailill, so let it be done. We also agree, said Connor. There are plenty of our lads in the house that have many a time gone round the border of the provinces. You will want them tonight, Connor, said an old warrior from Connacht in the west. They have often been seen on their backs on the roads of Rushy Deda, and many a fat steer have they left with me. It was a fat bullock thou didst have with thee once upon a day, replied Muicce of Ulster. Even thine own brother, and by the rushy road of Connacht he came and went not back. 'Twas a better man than he, even Erlach, son of Fergus MacLeda, who fell by the hand of Echbail in Tara Lurkra, replied Lugod of Munster. Echbail, cried Keltiar, son of Uchaker Hornskin of Ulster. Is it of him ye boast, whom I myself slew and cut off his head? And thus the heroes bandied about the tales and taunts of their victories, until at length Ket, son of Maga of the Connachtmen, arose and stood over the boar and took the knife into his hand. Now, he cried, let one man in Ulster match his deeds with mine, or else hold ye your peace and let me carve the boar. For a while there was silence, and then Connor, king of Ulster, said to Loigera the triumphant, Stay that for me. So Loigera arose and said, Ket shall never carve the boar for all of us. Not so fast, Loigera, said Ket. It is the custom among you Ulstermen that when a youth first takes arms, he comes to prove himself on us. So didst thou, Loigera, and we met thee at the border. From that meeting I have thy chariot and horses, and thou hadst a spear through thy ribs. Not thus will thou get the boar from me. Then Loigera sat down on his bench. Ket shall never divide that pig, spake then a tall, fair-haired warrior from Ulster, coming down the hall. Whom have we here? Asked Ket. A better man than thou, shouted the Ulstermen, even Angus, son of Lamagabad. Indeed, said Ket, and why is his father called Lamagabad? Meaning wanting a hand. We know not, said they. But I know it, said Ket. Once I went on a foray to the east, and was attacked by a troop. Lamagabad among them. He flung a lance at me. I seized the same lance and flung it back, and it shore off his hand, and it lay there on the fields before him. Shall that man's son measure himself with me? And Angus went to his bench and sat down. Keep up the contest, then cried Ket tauntingly, or let me divide the boar. That thou shalt not, cried another Ulster warrior of great stature. And who is this? Said Ket. Owen More, king of Fermanagh, said the Ulsterman. I have seen him ere now, said Ket. I took a drove of cattle from him before his own house. He put a spear through my shield, and I flung it back, and it tore out one of his eyes. And one-eyed he is to this day. Then Owen More sat down. Have ye any more to contest the pig with me? Then said Ket. Thou hast not won it yet, said Moonramar, son of Gurkind, rising up. Is that Moonramar? Said Ket. It is, they cried. It is but 3 days, said Ket, since I was the last man who won renown of thee. 3 heads of thy fighting men did I carry off from Doon Moonramar, and one of the 3 was the head of thy eldest son. Moonramar then sat down. Still the contest, said Ket, or shall I carve the boar? Contest thou shalt have, said Mend, son of Sword Heel. Who is this? Said Ket. 'Tis Mend, cried all the Ulstermen. Shall the sons of fellows with nicknames come here to contend with me? Cried Ket. I was the priest who christened thy father that name. 'Twas I who cut the heel off him, so that off he went with only one. What brings the son of that man to contend with me? Mend then sat down in his seat. Come to the contest, said Ket, or I shall begin to carve. Then arose from the Ulstermen a huge, grey, and terrible warrior. Who is this? Asked Ket. 'Tis Keltiar, son of Uhakar, cried they all. Wait a while, Keltiar, said Ket. Do not pound me to pieces just yet. Once, O Keltiar, I made a foray on the land and came in front of Doon. All thy folk attacked me, and thou amongst them. In a narrow pass we fought, and thou didst fling a spear at me, and I at thee. But my spear went through thy loins, and thou hast never been the better of it since. Then Keltiar sat down in his seat. Who else comes to the contest? Cried Ket. Or shall I at last divide the pig? Up rose then the son of King Connor, named Cuscrid the Stammerer. Whom have we here? Said Ket. 'Tis Cuscrid, son of Connor, cried they all. He has the stuff of a king in him, said Ket. No thanks to thee for that, said the youth. Well then, said Ket, thou madest thy first foray against us Connacht men, and on the border of the provinces we met thee. 1/3 of thy people thou didst leave behind thee, and came away with my spear through thy throat, so that thou canst not speak rightly ever since, for the sinews of thy throat were severed, and hence is Cuscrid the Stammerer thy by-name ever since. So thus Ket laid shame and defeat on the whole province of Ulster, nor was there any other warrior in the hall found to contend with him. Then Ket stood up triumphing, and took the knife in his hand, and prepared to carve the boar, when a noise and trampling were heard at the great door of the hall, and a mighty shout of exultation arose from the Ulstermen. When the press parted, Ket saw coming up the centre of the hall Connell of the Victories, and Connor the king dashed the helmet from his head and sprang up for joy. Glad we are, cried Connell, that all is ready for feast. And who is carving the boar for us? Ket, son of Maga, replied they, for none could contest the place of honor with him. Is that so, Ket? Says Connell Cairnach. Even so, replied Ket. And now welcome to thee, O Connell, thou of the iron heart and fiery blood, keen as the glitter of ice, ever victorious chieftain, hail, mighty son of Finhum. And Connell said, Hail to thee, Ket, flower of heroes, lord of chariots, a raging sea in battle, a strong majestic bull, hail, son of Maga. And now, went on Connell, rise up from the boar, and give me place. Why so? Replied Ket. Dost thou seek a contest from me? Said Connell. Verily thou shalt have it. By the gods of my nation I swear that since I first took weapons in my hand, I have never passed one day that I did not slay a Connachtman, nor one night that I did not make a foray on them. Nor have I ever slept but I had the head of a Connachtman under my knee. I confess, then said Ket, that thou art a better man than I, and I yield thee the boar. But if An my brother were here, he would match thee deed for deed. In sorrow and shame it is that he is not. An is here, shouted Connell, and with that he drew from his girdle the head of An and dashed it in the face of Ket. Then all sprang to their feet, and a wild shouting and tumult arose, and the swords flew out of themselves, and battle raged in the hall of Meicc Datho. Soon the hosts burst out through the doors of the dune, and smote and slew each other in the open field, until the Connacht host were put to flight. The hound of Meicc Datho pursued them along with the Ulstermen, and it came up with the chariot in which King Ailill was driving, and seized the pole of the chariot, but the charioteer dealt it a blow that cut off its head. When Ailill drew rein, they found the hound's head still clinging to the pole, whence that place is called Iber Cin Chan, or the yew tree of the hound's head. Now, when Conor pursued hard upon King Ailill, Firloga, the charioteer of Ailill, lighted down and hid himself in the heather. And as Conor drove past, Firloga leaped up behind him in the chariot and gripped him by the throat. "What wilt thou have of me?" said Conor. "Give over the pursuit," said Firloga, "and take me with thee to Emania, and let the maidens of Emania, so long as I am there, sing a serenade before my dwelling every night." "Granted," said Conor. So he took Firloga with him to Emania, and at the end of the year sent him back to Connacht, escorting him as far as to Athlone. And Firloga had from the King of Ulster 2 noble horses with golden bridles. But the serenade from the maidens of Ulster he did not get, though he got the horses instead. And thus ends the tale of the contention between Ulster and Connacht over the carving of Meicc Datho's boar. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like and subscribe, and depending on the platform, leaving a review would be greatly appreciated. And if you want to learn about an arguably more popular and yet very similar story to the one you just heard, called Brickrew's Feast, check out my YouTube video on the Green Knight's Irish origins. Yes, turns out the Arthurian legend may be rooted in Irish mythology. I've also written a few books you might be interested in, available over on Amazon. Might I recommend Samhain in Your Pocket, a tiny little book about Halloween's Celtic origins. As always, my name is I.E. Kneverday, editor of the short story anthology Neon Druid and creator of IrishMyths.com. Thanks for coming out.